Well, hello and welcome back to Walking the Talk, the sermon podcast of Creekside Community Church in San Leandro, California, where we help you to walk out what we talked about on Sunday. My name is Jeff Bruce. I'm one of the pastors here. I'm joined by John Bruce and Max Butler. Gentlemen, how you doing on this muggy, hot July day?
Rather be here than most places in the United States.
Yep.
Yeah, if this is as muggy and hot as it gets, then, you know.
A bad day here is a glorious day anywhere else.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
I've been to New York in the summer and D.C., and it's just, and even Nashville. I'll be there next week, and then, yeah.
Yeah, we were in Helen, which is a little German town in northern Georgia, and it was very charming aside from the 100-degree heat and 100-degree humidity.
Oh.
And we're walking around with our kids, and Cashel looks at me and goes, "Honey, why are you so, like, there's something, are you," and I said, literally, I'm just hot, and I'm in a bad mood.
Yeah.
And then I got in air conditioning, and I was fine. I can't imagine walking around in that. It was just debilitating.
I'm from the desert. I'm used to heat, but they say it's dry heat. But even still, I'm glad not to be
On the face of the sun.
Yes.
Yeah. It's good. Good. Well, we are going to continue in 1 Samuel and looking now at David's tests, the various tests he goes through, which really take us through the end of the book. Starting in 1 Samuel 24 with test 1. When Saul returned from following the Philistines, he was told, "Behold, David is in the wilderness of En-gedi." Then Saul took 3,000 men out of all Israel and went to seek David and his men in front of the wild goats' rocks. And he came to the sheepfolds by the way, where there was a cave, and Saul went in to relieve himself. Now David and his men were sitting in the innermost parts of the cave. And the men of David said to him, "Here is the day of which the Lord said to you, Behold, I will give your enemy into your hand, and you shall do to him as shall seem good to you." Then David arose and stealthily cut off a corner of Saul's robe. And afterward, David's heart struck him because he had cut off a corner of Saul's robe. He said to his men, "The Lord forbid that I should do this thing to my Lord, the Lord's anointed, to put out my hand against him, seeing he is the Lord's anointed." So David persuaded his men with these words and did not permit them to attack Saul. And Saul rose up and left the cave and went on his way. Afterward, David also arose and went out of the cave and called after Saul, "My Lord, the king." And when Saul looked behind him, David bowed with his face to the earth and paid homage. And David said to Saul, "Why do you listen to the words of men who say, Behold, David seeks your harm? Behold, this day your eyes have seen how the Lord gave you today into my hand in the cave. And some told me to kill you, but I spared you. I said, I will not put out my hand against my Lord, for he is the Lord's anointed. See, my father, see the corner of your robe in my hand. For by the fact that I cut off the corner of your robe and did not kill you, you may know and see that there is no wrong or treason in my hands. I have not sinned against you, though you hunt my life to take it. May the Lord judge between me and you. May the Lord avenge me against you, but my hand shall not be against you. As the proverb of the ancients says, out of the wicked comes wickedness, but my hand shall not be against you. After whom has the king of Israel come out, and whom do you pursue? After a dead dog? After a flea? May the Lord therefore be judge and give sentence between me and you, and see to it, and plead my cause, and deliver me from your hand." As soon as David had finished speaking these words to Saul, Saul said, "Is this your voice, my son David?" And Saul lifted up his voice and wept. He said to David, "You are more righteous than I, for you have repaid me good, whereas I have repaid you evil. And you have declared this day how you have dealt well with me, and that you did not kill me when the Lord put me into your hands. For if a man finds his enemy, will he let him go away safe? So may the Lord reward you with good for what you have done to me this day. And now behold, I know that you shall surely be king, and that the kingdom of Israel shall be established in your hand. Swear to me therefore by the Lord that you will not cut off my offspring after me, and that you will not destroy my name out of my father's house." And David swore this to Saul. Then Saul went home, but David and his men went up to the stronghold. Dad, you preached on this and called it How to Love Your Enemy. And it struck me as we're reading it, I think there's this popular idea that the Old Testament is a book of vengeance, and the New Testament is really a book of mercy and grace. And yet, the story is more complicated than that, because when you look in the Old Testament, you see all of these clues as to how we should treat our enemy, and really pointing toward this higher ethic that I think points to Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought about this. This is the only time in the Old Testament I could think of that anyone has the opportunity to kill an enemy and doesn't take it.
Yeah.
The closest you can get to it is when David forgives his brothers.
Joseph.
But they were his brothers
Joseph,
and the sons of his father, and he forgives them. But this is the only time that someone has a legitimate enemy, a legitimate chance to kill their enemy,
Yeah.
and does not take it. And he doesn't take it because he's responding to God rather than to his enemy.
Yeah.
He says, because of who God has made you, I will honor God. And it seems to me that is the first little sign that there's more going on than just the law, the way the law has been interpreted. And it becomes to full flower in Jesus.
Right.
When he says in Matthew 5, I think it's 48, you heard it said, you shall hate your enemy and love your neighbor. But I say to you, love your enemies. Because what they had done, the law never says hate your enemies.
No.
What they said, you shall love your neighbor. They say, oh, neighbors. Well, that's not everybody. That's just my neighbors. That's just people I designate as neighbors. There are neighbors, there are non-neighbors.
Right.
I'm obligated to love my neighbors, but not my non-neighbors. And what Jesus is saying is you have no non-neighbors. They're all neighbors. If you love God, you'll love all people. And David is demonstrating this for the first time in the Old Testament.
Yeah. Yeah, don't you think it's important to maybe distinguish between the parameters of the law and then maybe we could call it the way of the prophet, the actual call of the prophets to a heart that's following God? Because the civil law of Israel is good, it's God's law, but it's applied to civil situations. It doesn't necessarily speak to what our heart should be towards other people. It does sometimes, but let me give you the example. Like, so an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, people go, well, that means that we should look to seek vengeance in our hearts. Now, Jesus clearly says that's not the way you should have read it. I think a more natural way to read it is this is a limitation on violence rather than a command that you must seek your own vengeance at every time. It's saying an eye for an eye, not a head for an eye.
Right.
Or a tribe for an eye or something like that. It's a way of saying that repayment must be proportional to the crime committed.
Yeah.
Not a way of saying in your heart, you should go seek this out. And you really see that because even in Proverbs, you think of Proverbs 25, where it says, if your enemy is hungry, give him bread to eat. And if he is thirsty, give him water to drink. For you will heap burning coals on his head and the Lord will reward you. And so even there, you see this higher aim of the law towards a heart that loves even those who are opposed to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I was re-listening to the talk, and then a big monkey wrench came into my brain. And the monkey wrench is Psalm 139, verse 19. Oh, that you would slay the wicked, O God. Men of blood, depart from me. They speak evil intent. They speak against you with malicious intent. Your enemies, which is interesting, take your name in vain. Do I not hate those that hate you?
Yeah.
Lord. So this is like, I heard that and I was like, okay, this is David, but David also wrote this.
Right.
And so what do you guys think about that?
Yeah, so Jesus says, love your enemy. David says, I hate my enemies.
Or I hate them with it's like this complete hatred or a perfect hatred.
Yeah.
I count them as my enemies. Search me. But then he says, search me, O God, and know my heart. I mean, I've always struggled with that passage because it's like there's this opportunity to have like a holy hatred of sorts. And yet it's like he says, search my heart. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
There's my monkey wrench.
Right.
I think first of all, it is your response to God that matters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you have to ask, how does God respond to the wicked?
Yeah.
God loves the wicked, but he also judges the wicked.
Yeah. He is against the wicked.
And that's what David is praying for in Psalm 139.
Yeah.
Just as what Paul says in Romans 13. Never take your own revenge, brethren,
Yeah, Romans
but
12.
leave room for the wrath of God.
Yeah.
He doesn't say, don't take your own revenge because God doesn't want any revenge to be taken.
Right.
God loves everybody. That's a false view of God. God will bring justice. No, God is not mocked.
Right.
But it's his job, not your job.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is, you're bringing up a complexity in the biblical narrative.
Yeah.
And one thing I would say about it is it continues on into the New Testament. So it's not it's not just an Old Testament, New Testament thing.
Yeah.
You see Paul saying things like, let those who do not love the Lord Jesus be accursed.
Yeah.
In 1 Corinthians 16, or if anyone preaches another gospel, let him be accursed.
Yeah.
And so that kind of cursing language, it's an imprecation. And that's Old Testament language. But then you see Jesus cursing a fig tree in the Gospels and saying, may no one ever eat from you again, talking about fruitless Israel. And so there are prayers of cursing in the New Testament. I think one way to put these two together is to say, the way we leave vengeance for God is by praying our opposition to people rather than taking it into our own hands.
Yeah.
And you think that's actually what David is doing in the Psalms, is committing it to the Lord and then trusting that the Lord will do it. And by praying it, he's actually releasing it.
Yeah.
And that does not exclude or preclude the idea of also praying for your enemies, praying. And so I think a great example of this is Paul, where he says, may anyone who does not love the Lord Jesus, may he be accursed. And then talking about his own countrymen, the Jews, in Romans 10, who he has said very strong things against,
Yeah.
saying, basically, my heart breaks for them, and I wish that I could be accursed, that they might know Jesus, essentially.
Yeah.
And so I think you see both there, that I don't know if I'd even call it a tension, but the reality that, Lord, I want you to judge the wicked, but I also want you to redeem the wicked.
Yeah.
So,
And what role does judgment have to, play in that, in the overall redemption of everything? Yeah.
Well, David says that in this passage.
Yeah.
He says to Saul, may the Lord judge between
Yes.
you and me, and may the Lord avenge me on you, but my hand shall not be against you.
Yeah.
And that's the issue there, is who am I trusting for justice?
yeah. Yeah, and it's an interesting dynamic because I think we only look at forgiveness as, well, we should forgive because God is forgiving. And that's true. We should also forgive because God is vengeful. That it's not our right to take vengeance. But
Yeah.
that doesn't mean that there aren't things that in the world that need to be stopped,
Yeah.
or that wickedness needs to be put to an end.
Yeah.
We actually can't cope with that kind of moral universe that says there's nothing wrong with this, or that there's nothing that needs to be stopped. It's just that it's entrusting that to God and not to ourselves, because invariably I screw it up.
I think that's why the Puritans, if I remember, made a great distinction between the average citizen and the magistrate.
Yeah.
That the magistrate had a duty from God to exact justice in the world and to punish the evil,
Right.
and to praise the wicked. That's the purpose of government.
Yeah.
And so if you were in that position, it was your moral obligation to make sure justice was done in the society for the good of society.
Yeah.
But as the non-magistrate, as just a regular guy, that's not you don't have that privilege. You don't have that responsibility. You're to forgive your enemies and leave it in God's hands.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point, and we're probably getting too far afield, but I can't help myself. I want to talk about this. But no, Gary Haugen, who founded International Justice Mission, he wrote a book called The Locust Effect, and basically about how everyday violence keeps people in poverty, right? Yeah. Just tribal violence, just gang violence and stuff. And one of the things he says is, as violence is abstracted and scaled up into systems of justice that enforce it, that tribalized everyday violence goes down, because there's a system of law that exacts punishment, right? Either through prison or whatever form it is. But you actually see that as violence is sort of offloaded from the people to take vengeance up into the government and to systems of law that have more checks and balances, that this violence goes down and that people flourish.
Yeah.
And so I think, that helps us to make sense in some ways of what Paul says in Romans 13 or 1 Peter 2 about the necessity of the government punishing evil as a magistrate of God. Not to say they always do it. The history is full of the ways of screwing it up, but it is to say that when that system is abstracted up to the government for violence, at least you have parameters, you have law, you have order in a way that the tribalized violence and the interpersonal violence, there's no check on that. It just spirals out of control.
Yeah, bad government is better than no government.
Yeah.
For society.
And all the libertarians and anarchists just went, I'm not going to listen to this anymore.
I never listened to it in the first place, but I'm not certainly.
Well, the reason is because they're looking at society from the bottom rather than from the top. In terms of what is good for me. and I want to be free rather
Yeah.
than what's good for all of society.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
a society where there are many people who are not good people.
Yeah. No, that's good. So I'm curious, Dad, why do you think David feels bad about cutting the garment initially?
I've been thinking about that.
Yeah.
And I think it's because he held the God's calling in such high regard. It didn't matter who was called. What mattered was that God had called him.
Yeah.
And so for him to even cut the edge of Saul's robe, it convicts him. And you see this throughout the story of David. There's various times when he is very convicted about something
Yeah.
that you think, huh?
Yeah.
What's the deal? But because he sees it from God's perspective. And he sees this is shaking my fist at God. If I were to do this, it is disrespecting God, which is a big deal.
Yeah.
So it wasn't the act, it was what the act signified.
Right. Yeah. What was his motive in doing it? It's interesting. David's men think that God has commanded or given him permission to kill Saul.
They make up this whole story about what God has said to you, and now God is fulfilling this, and God never said any of those things to David. But it's just we do that all the time. We look at circumstances and we say, well, this means that God wants you, or God is doing this. It's a very human thing.
Yeah.
But David knew God's word, and he knew that God hadn't. And if God ordains somebody, then it's his responsibility to remove him in his own way, in his own time.
Yeah. Which is great. I mean, that's really David and being an improvement over people, over somebody like Abraham, who initially had to grow by faith by making the mistakes of taking things into his own hands. And obviously we're going to see that with David, that he has.
Yeah, wait till next chapter.
Yeah. Obviously there's things that happen, but I mean, just the idea of like, we have moments of faith where we trust, and then we have moments when we take things into our own hands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a high moment for David. So.
It is. And I wonder, there's a great narrative tension here because David hears the men, then he arises, and you wonder, well, what's he going to do? And so I wonder if part of the test here is David even like, wondering, what am I going to do when I go to Saul? You know what I mean? The narrative doesn't say. And then he decides to do this. And it's sort of like, this is the temptation right here. And then, so I don't know if David's motives were completely clear, but his heart was struck by the time he was there to say, I can't do this.
Yeah.
And
that was kind of the way I looked at it too. It's just he is crawling in the dark from the back of the cave where all of his men are to the front where Saul is relieving himself. and he's been listening to his men, and he knows this is his enemy, and he can solve a whole lot of their problems right now.
right.
This may be the only time he gets Saul alone.
Yeah.
And yet by the time he gets there, all he does is cut off and it does it in such a gentle way that Saul is even unaware that he has lost part of his robe.
Yep.
And
It's good. So I think one thing that might be challenging in applying this is I don't often think of people as my enemy. You know what I mean? And I wonder, is it helpful to label people I don't like that way or not? In terms of just realizing, well, I got to love them. You know what I mean? Like it's do you think most people think of the world in terms of friends and enemies? Because the Bible certainly paints that picture of there are friends and enemies, but I don't know that the average person looks at people that way.
I think they do.
Yeah.
I think they do. I think Paul says, Alexander the coppersmith did me much harm.
Yeah.
Beware of him.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And here's an enemy.
Yeah.
This guy's a jerk.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that he didn't want him to be saved and stuff, but Paul had a lot of opposition.
Yeah.
And he was very realistic about who his opponents were.
Yeah, he talks about enemies of the cross of Christ.
Yeah.
He talks about,
I think of this story of a church in Louisville who wanted to open up this space that was to have concerts, and they did a lot of really cool things in the community. They made this there was kind of like this third space where they were hosting community events. They were hosting, like, it was a nightclub where they had concerts, and they had secular bands in there. And it was but it was a part of the way that this church used their resources to bless this community. And when it got word through other media and press that they were affiliated with a church that that held traditional orthodoxy, they were attacked and maligned, and ultimately the thing was it went to the wayside because of it, and they essentially destroyed it. And so they were trying to help the community and bless the community, and they were attacked.
Yep.
So I think that signifies, that's whether or not you think you have enemies.
You do.
You do.
Yeah, you have people opposed to Christ.
Just wait a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There wouldn't be a command to love your enemies if you didn't have it.
Yeah, but I think it's important to realize that there's an enemy,
Yeah.
and that there's enemies of the cross, and that they're real, and it helps you to be, I think, shrewd and wise in the way you look at reality.
Yeah.
To go that people whose actions and words demonstrate they're opposed to you or what you believe, they're opposed to you and what you believe, and so you need to treat them accordingly. And now part of that means now these commands take on a new significance because you understand that they are opposed.
Well, Jesus says they if they hated me, they'll hate you.
Yep.
Yeah, and just realizing that to suffer for that, or to even acquire a new set of enemies just because you believe in Jesus, then it's you can consider it worthy to suffer. And
Yeah. I think part of the challenge of applying this is we love the idea of loving our enemies. Like, we just don't treat people who frustrate us every day very well. At least I don't. You know what I mean? When I'm more prone to just snap at them and realizing that even the most implacably opposed people are people that I'm called to show grace and kindness to, because God sends his rain on the just and the unjust.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good. Shall we? Well, David passes a test, and then we get to chapter 25, and maybe Abigail passes the test here, but David's bailed out by a wise woman. So now Samuel died, and all Israel assembled and mourned for him, and they buried him in his house at Ramah. Then David arose and went down to the wilderness of Paran, and there was a man in Maon whose business was in Carmel. The man was very rich. He had 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats. He was shearing his sheep in Carmel. Now, the name of the man was Nabal, and the name of his wife, Abigail. The woman was discerning and beautiful, but the man was harsh and badly behaved. He was a Calebite. David heard in the wilderness that Nabal was shearing his sheep. So David sent 10 young men, and David said to the young men, "Go up to Carmel and go to Nabal and greet him in my name. And thus you shall greet him. Peace be to you, and peace be to your house, and peace be to all that you have. I hear that you have shearers. Now your shepherds have been with us, and we did them no harm, and they missed nothing all the time they were in Carmel. Ask your young men, and they will tell you. Therefore let my young men find favor in your eyes, for we come on a feast day. Please give whatever you have at your hand to your servants and to your son David." When David's young men came, they said all this to Nabal in the name of David, and then they waited. And Nabal answered David's servants, "Who is David? Who is the son of Jesse? There are many servants these days breaking away from their masters. Shall I take my bread and my water and my meat that I have killed from my shearers and give it to men who come from where I do not know where?" So David's young men turned away and came back and told him all this. And David said to his men, "Every man strap on his sword." And every man of them strapped on his sword. David also strapped on his sword. And about 400 men went up after David, while 200 remained with the baggage. But one of the young men told Abigail, Nabal's wife, "Behold, David sent messengers out of the wilderness to greet our master, and he railed at them. Yet the men were very good to us, and we suffered no harm, and we did not miss anything when we were in the fields, as long as we went with them. They were a wall to us, both by night and by day, all the while we were with them, keeping the sheep. Now therefore know this, and consider what you should do, for harm is determined against our master and against all his house, and he is such a worthless man that one cannot speak to him." Then Abigail made haste and took 200 loaves and 2 skins of wine and 5 sheep already prepared and 5 seahs of parched grain and 100 clusters of raisins and 200 cakes of figs, and laid them on donkeys. And she said to her young man, "Go on before me. Behold, I come after you." But she did not tell her husband Nabal. And as she rode on the donkey and came down under cover of the mountain, behold, David and his men came down toward her, and she met them. Now David had said, "Surely in vain have I guarded all that this fellow has in the wilderness, so that nothing was missed of all that belonged to him, and he has returned me evil for good. God do so to the enemies of David and more also, if by morning I leave so much as one male of all who belong to him. When Abigail saw David, she hurried and got down from the donkey and fell before David on her face and bowed to the ground. She fell at his feet and said, On me alone, my Lord, be the guilt. Please let your servant speak in your ears and hear the words of your servant. Let not my Lord regard this worthless fellow Nabal, for as his name is, so is he. Nabal is his name, and folly is with him. But I, your servant, did not see the young men of my Lord, whom you sent. Now then, my Lord, as the Lord lives and as your soul lives, because the Lord has restrained you from blood guilt and from saving with your own hand, now then let your enemies and those who seek to do evil to my Lord be as Nabal. And now let this present that your servant has brought to my Lord be given to the young men who follow my Lord. Please forgive the trespass of your servant. For the Lord will certainly make my Lord a sure house, because my Lord is fighting the battles of the Lord, and evil shall not be found in you so long as you live. If men rise up to pursue you and to seek your life, the life of my Lord shall be bound in the bundle of the living in the care of the Lord your God, and the lives of your enemies he shall sling out as from the hollow of a sling. And when the Lord has done to my Lord according to all the good that he has spoken concerning you and appointed you prince over Israel, my Lord shall have no cause of grief or pangs of conscience for having shed blood without cause, or for my Lord working salvation himself. And when the Lord has dealt well with my Lord, then remember your servant. And David said to Abigail, Blessed be the Lord, the God of Israel, who sent you this day to meet me. Blessed be your discretion, and blessed be you who have kept me this day from blood guilt and from working salvation with my own hand. For as surely as the Lord, the God of Israel lives, who has restrained me from hurting you, unless you had hurried and come to meet me, truly by morning there had not been left to Nabal so much as one male. Then David received from her hand what she had brought him, and he said to her, Go up in peace to your house. See, I have obeyed your voice, and I have granted your petition. And Abigail came to Nabal, and behold, he was holding a feast in his house, like the feast of a king. And Nabal's heart was merry within him, for he was very drunk. So she told him nothing at all until the morning light. In the morning, when the wine had gone out of Nabal, his wife told him these things, and his heart died within him, and he became as a stone. And about 10 days later, the Lord struck Nabal, and he died. When David heard that Nabal was dead, he said, Blessed be the Lord, who has avenged the insult I received at the hand of Nabal and has kept back his servant from wrongdoing. The Lord has returned the evil of Nabal on his own head. Then David sent and spoke to Abigail to take her as his wife. When the servants of David came to Abigail at Carmel, they said to her, David has sent us to you to take you to him as his wife. And she rose and bowed with her face to the ground and said, Behold, your handmaid is a servant to wash the feet of the servants of my Lord. And Abigail hurried and rose and mounted a donkey, and her 5 young women attended her. She followed the messengers of David and became his wife. David also took Ahinoam of Jezreel, and both of them became his wives. Saul had given Michal, his daughter, David's wife, to Palti, the son of Laish, who was of Galim. Also just struck me reading that. That's the second take back for Saul.
Yeah.
Of giving David a wife and then taking her back.
Yeah.
You called this an angry man, a wise woman, and a gracious God. And I thought that was good.
Yeah. That's a great story. Just reminding to me that you never get to a point where you're permanently changed. I mean, just because you did well yesterday doesn't mean you're going to do well today. And sin is a constant battle with us all of our lives, regardless of how far we've come.
Yeah.
And so David is he's just angry for being treated so badly by Nabal, and feels perfectly justified now in becoming the robber king and going and wiping out all Nabal's guys.
Yeah.
And thundering down out of the hills on the, I don't know if they're on horses or not, but anyway, they're all together.
Right.
And on the way.
Thundering down on donkeys.
Yeah. Thundering down on donkeys, yeah.
Well, this is it's such a cool thing to actually read these two stories back to back.
Yes.
Because what's happening is we see that David's conscience was struck, and he did the right thing in this one moment because he esteemed the kingship that was ordained by God.
Yes.
And yet he thinks, oh, well, but this guy's just a jerk, and I can just do anything I want.
Yeah.
And then Abigail comes in and reminds us, almost just like the Holy Spirit in a way, just says that no, you have to treat even a fool like Nabal the same way that you would treat and honor God's, chosen one. Just beautiful. I think it's
It
cool.
is.
Yeah.
No, her response is masterful.
Oh, absolutely. as we were reading, I was like, okay, so man, how was this constructed? Was this written by? I mean, I know it was captured of her words, but everything from like the sling and all the little references that she makes, it's just a masterful piece of writing right there. Yeah.
Yeah, and what it's like, it's a master class in how to reprove someone.
Yeah.
I think is what you see. You talked about the kindness and truth, but for one thing, she acknowledges the severity of this insult.
Yeah.
That a wealthy man in this culture with this much means at his disposal, treating them this way,
Yeah.
is a massive breach of code.
Yeah.
I mean, it is just as deep an insult as you can make against someone. And she goes, yeah, he's a fool for doing this to you.
Yeah.
And then she reminds him, this is your destiny. This is who God has called you to be. And then I love that she tells him, take a long view of this. When you are king, how would you look back at this moment?
Yeah.
And you think about what you did and the blood guilt you incurred for an insult. Do you want that to linger with you? I just think that is like, she never goes after his character directly, right? She assumes the best.
Yeah.
And reminds him of who he is. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, the truth about David, though, is even though he fails in this moment, he has the right conscience in the sense that she's able to stoke that conscience.
Immediately.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And we see that again down the road, when David makes other mistakes, people snap him out of it. And we see that his conscience is still sensitive. He hasn't made such a habit, like in the way that Saul's conscience was more seared because he had just made such a habit of ignoring God and his advice.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
The thing that struck me about her is how quickly she acts. Because, I mean, I think the fact that the servant comes to her, that this is probably not the first time she's had to
She's the fixer.
get her husband out of a mess that he's and she doesn't hesitate.
Yeah.
She gets food. And starts making her way to try to find David, which is an incredible thing in itself, that she is able to run into him on the same trail out in the hills that is there. But she acts, that she doesn't say, oh, that's my idiot husband. He can get himself out of this time. Or what could I do? There's no way I can stop the 400 armed men there'd be lots of reasons for her not to have gone.
Yeah.
But she gives it a try. She puts together a far more food than David's men had even asked for.
Yeah.
And then she does all that. And then when she meets David, she humbles herself so much just to kind of, I think, ease the tension by letting him know that, you're rightfully offended by what my husband did.
Yeah.
And really humbles herself there and takes full responsibility. I didn't see your guys,
Yeah.
or else this would not have happened.
Right.
Takes all the responsibility. So there's kindness, but there's also truth. Apparently it was pretty well known in Israel that God had called David to be king.
Yeah.
And that's what she says. And you have God's calling on you because you fear the Lord. Stop fearing him. And you could lose. She doesn't say this, but I think it's kind of implied. You'll be blessed as long as you're good. Stop being good, and you can forget his blessing. So she speaks truth, here, as you said, Jeff. It's just she really is very very clear and clever how she brings all this around to David.
Yeah, and it's interesting. David says, it is God who has restrained me from hurting you.
Yes.
And so he's able to see in the wisdom of Abigail's response
Right.
that this is God saying, hey, I'm trying to bail you out of the situation here. You, and I think that's a great reminder for us that whenever someone has a thoughtful critique or corrective, and you can tell they've really put time into it, to just assume, oh, this is the protection of the Lord coming to help me. And, the fact that David doesn't go, well, look at what's going on here. Or think about this from it just immediately, it's just clear to him. Yes. That you are in the right here.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things I've learned or tried to learn is even when I get a critique that I'm not certain is coming from the right place or is even as well constructed and thought out as this. I take it as an opportunity to be circumspect of my motives, or to look into my own self and to see if there's anything valid in this thing that I might learn. And then before I just completely disregard it, or and take what's good out of any reproof, and then see it as coming from the Lord.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, I look at it from Abigail's point of view, that she takes action, and because she takes action, God uses her to stop David. And how many times I don't take action because I don't know exactly what to do or how it'll work out or what to say or anything like that. But God can actually use those times because God works for people.
Yeah.
And it's better to step out on faith and completely blow it, and at least give God an opportunity to do something, to hold myself back because I don't have all of my T's crossed. I don't understand the whole situation or things like that.
Yeah.
And
she understood enough to act.
She did. She
Yeah.
did.
Yeah, and she's, I think, a great combination of action and reflection and contemplation.
Yeah.
Right? Because there are ready, fire, aim people who would just jump into the situation and then make it worse. But she's an embodiment of Lady Wisdom here in the way that she acts, is that she takes initiative, but also she, what is it? The words of the wise commend knowledge. They make their speech persuasive. Sweetness of speech is persuasive. She just understands how to persuade someone with her words. And so it's both. And I think that's what's so impressive about her, because it's so rare to meet someone that has both of those qualities.
Yeah. And yet she was wasted on Nabal.
Yeah. For a while.
She was. No, I'm just, as you were saying, that the personification of Lady Wisdom. I mean, that just resonated with me. I mean, she sounds like the Proverbs 31 woman, and I'm just wondering how much of her influence came into the writing. I know that was Solomon down the road, and that was not his mother, but I mean, I'm sure there's something about her that must have lingered.
Yeah.
In the court.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Proverbs 31, two things are interesting about it. It's written to a king.
Yeah.
And it's written by his mom, which is just two things that are really interesting to think about. And one of the things that mom says to King there is, the heart of her husband trusts her and he will have no lack of gain. And you just see that in Abigail. I think David realized right away, this woman's going to save me from a lot of trouble in life. She holds me in high regard, but also she can see things about me that I can't see. Yeah. And I think that's a great reminder for us guys in particular when we're angry, when I'm angry, is that your anger can be justified. Often your response is not.
Yeah.
The inciting cause of the anger is right. It's just that you want to do something that's completely disproportionate or counterproductive in terms of what you're doing with your anger.
But I'm angry now.
Right? Yeah, as Homer Simpson would say, 6-week waiting period. I'm angry now. Right. And our wives can save us from so much by just saying, why don't you consider this before you do anything?
Yeah.
Listen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Marge gets some Abigail status every now and again.
Yeah. It's good. Any other thoughts about this passage?
Well, just the sovereignty and goodness of God.
Yeah.
Protecting David.
Amen.
Removing Nabal.
Yeah.
Just all the things that God is behind the scenes in this, but he's obviously very active.
Yeah, and you really get the idea that Nabal's time has come.
Yeah.
It's not just like this one incident is what caused his undoing. It's that this is a fool who is about to reap what he has sown.
Yeah.
And God's timing providentially is perfect in that.
I mean, even his servant says, nobody can talk to him.
Yeah.
You know what he's like.
Exactly.
This is just typical Nabal stuff.
He's a scoffer.
Yeah, he really is.
Yeah.
And he's a drunk.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, unteachable. And if you've got a wife like Abigail, and she can't even help you to
Yeah.
see reality. It's like, that's a good indicator that,
Yeah.
man, you're just off.
Yeah.
You're off your rocker,
Yeah.
as they used to say.
Yeah.
So
I've heard him say it still.
I've heard of as they. Yeah. Well, thanks, guys. Good reminder not to sin in my anger today from this story. And yeah, we'll talk, hey, why don't we talk about the Bible again soon? Sound good?
Sounds like a plan.
All right. Thanks. We'll be back with you soon.